Most of the tools were made by one guy named Tommy, starting with the top-bottom joint. This is the oldest of the three, and technically it wasn't even made by Tommy. Versions of this device had been floating around since the earliest mechanical slot machines existed, it just hadn't found its perfect operator yet. The design itself was almost insultingly simple, a steel ring connected to a length of guitar string. The idea was to use it to close the electrical circuit inside an older mechanical slot machine at precisely at the right moment, tricking the machine into paying out the jackpot. That's it, and the first time it was tested in a real casino, it won $35 of a nickel slot machine, small enough that nobody looked twice. But once the timing was dialed in, within a single weekend the device had pulled in close to $10,000 at a rate of roughly $1,000 an hour, simply by moving from machine to machine and repeating the same motion. For many years this device worked in casinos across the country, largely because casino security at the time just wasn't what it is today. There were no cameras angled to catch a hand near a coin slot for half a second, there was no reason to suspect a steel ring and a guitar string. Eventually though, the top-bottom joint became a victim of its own success. As a word spread and more people started using similar devices, casinos started watching more closely, and the device that had once been undetectable became, in its creator's own words, a dinosaur. By the mid-1980s, it was already considered outdated technology in the world of slot cheating. But the damage during its run was already done, and more importantly, it provided a concept that would define the next 15 years, that slot machines could be beaten, not by understanding the game, but by understanding the machine itself. The monkey bar. If the top-bottom joint was simple, the monkey bar was something else entirely, and it's responsible for the largest share of money in this story. By the early 1990s, the slot machine industry had moved on. Casinos were rolling out video poker machines built around microprocessors, a random number generators, a completely different generation of technology. The old tricks didn't work anymore. For a while, it looked like the era of beating slot machines with homemade tools was simply over. But then came the monkey bar. Monkey bar was built from a steel spring and a guitar wire, shaped into a small hook. The device was designed to be fed up through a slot machine's payout hole, the same opening where the coins dropped out when you won. Once inside, it could trip a micro switch connected to the machine's hopper. It's the internal pocket that stored all of its coins. Once you trip that switch, the hopper would empty itself completely, paying out as if the machine itself had decided to. The results were staggering. Operators using this device could clear out entire machines one after another, but now you may be thinking, how is this device different than the first one that we covered? So here's what makes Monkey Bar different from the first device, and why the financial damage is so much harder to actually measure. You see, this tool didn't stay in one person's hands. It was shared, it was taught, it was sold to other cheats in other cities, who then used their own copies in their own casinos, completely independent of whoever they'd gotten the design from. Every unit that went out the door became its own independent source of loss, in different locations, often for years at a time. When investigators eventually built a case against the network using this device, the number that made it into official charges was over $5 million stolen from casinos nationwide. And that's just for a roughly 2-year period that prosecutors could actually document and prove in court. It doesn't include the years before that window or the copies that likely kept circulating in casinos around country long after original case was closed. In other words, $5 million is a number on paper. The real number is almost certainly higher, and nobody will ever know exactly how much higher. For roughly 4 years, this device ran largely unchecked across casinos in Las Vegas, Atlantic City and beyond, and it might have continued even longer if not for one near miss that put every casino in the country on alert. Device 3, the light wand. Of the 3 devices, this one is the most elegant, and it's the one that exploited a genuine clever flaw in how modern slot machines actually verify a payout. Inside many video slot machines of the era, there was a small component called optical sensor, essentially a light detecting switch that the machine's internal hardware used as a part of its payout process. Under normal operation, the machine's own internal light source will trigger that sensor at the right moment and the payout will be processed. However, the light wand exploited this directly. It was built by attaching a small flashlight to a length of steel wire. inserted into the right opening on the machine, the beam of light would hit the optical sensor from the outside, triggering the exact same response as if the machine's internal hardware had done it. As far as the machine was concerned, everything looked completely normal. The light source just happened to be coming from somewhere it shouldn't have been. This device was used by a small network of operators across multiple cities: Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and other major gambling markets, often with one person operating the device while others distracting casino staff and kept attention away from what was actually happening at the machine. For a while it worked exactly like its predecessor, fast, repeatable, and very hard to notice in the moment. But by this point casinos had learned from years of chasing these devices. Hidden cameras had been installed specifically aimed at areas where the tools were used. Security teams across the industry were sharing information about suspects and methods. And finally, in 1999, federal investigators finally caught up with the network using this device, after one operator got careless and was caught with his own unit. Phone records connected to him to others using the same design, and an informant was placed inside the group. The next time the light wand was used, it didn't get away clean. The device and an improved version of it became the key piece of evidence that finally ended its chapter of slot machine history. Before you go and try to make your own tool, sadly, today modern slot machines use encrypted software verifying payout systems with random number generators, technology that makes all of these three devices completely useless.